Elliot Graves was a writer, not a particularly famous one, but enough to pay his bills. He lived alone in a quiet New England town called Briar Hollow, where silence wrapped the streets like a thick wool blanket. It was the kind of town where everyone kept their curtains closed and their secrets even tighter. He had a habit of writing late into the night, fingers dancing over the keyboard while black coffee pulsed through his veins. But it wasn't until last Tuesday that something changed. That was the night he first woke up at 3:07 a.m. Tuesday night. The knock was soft. 3 gentle taps, enough to wake him, but not enough to terrify. Elliot sat up in bed, heart knocking against his ribs. The room was cold. Too cold. He glanced at the clock. 3:07. He waited. Nothing else. Must have been a dream, he thought. Just the wind. But there was no wind that night. Wednesday night again, the knock. 3 soft taps. 3:07 a.m. This time, he crept to the front door in his slippers, heart stuttering like an old engine. He peeked through the peephole. No one. The street was empty. Not a soul, not even a raccoon scuttling through the trash. When he opened the door, the air outside was still. Too still. He shut the door and locked it. Then, for the first time in years, Elliot decided not to write that night. Thursday. He told himself it was stress. Lack of sleep. Maybe he needed a break. He tried to write something light, a romance maybe. But when he opened his laptop, the cursor blinked on a half-written horror novel he didn't remember starting. The title was The Man with No Face. The page was filled with strange, stuttering sentences. He comes when the writer sleeps. He comes when the writer writes. He has no face because you haven't given him one. Elliot stared. He didn't remember typing any of it. He deleted the file. That night the knock was louder. Friday 3:07 again. 3 knocks. Then silence. But this time, something new. A shadow on the wall. Tall, lean, unmoving. It stayed there for 7 minutes before fading away. Elliot didn't sleep after that. He searched his hard drive and found dozens of documents he didn't recognize. All horror stories, all about the same thing. A man with no face. Saturday. He drove to Boston, stayed in a hotel, drank himself into sleep. Still, 3:07 a.m. Knock, knock, knock. He screamed at the door. He begged. He cried. No one came. But he dreamed. And in his dream, the man was closer. Faceless. Smiling. Sunday, Elliot doesn't write anymore. His front door was unlocked with all the lights on. Inside, everything smelled like old paper and burnt wood. But sometimes, when his laptop was open, he sees something just beyond the edge of his vision. Someone watching. He opened the man with a face. Only one sentence, the one he wrote into flesh. Give me a face. And every night, he typed slowly. Knock. His fingers moved on their own. Knock. He described eyes. It began again one quiet night in Benton, wrinkled, sleepy Maine town with more scar across the jaw. At exactly midnight, the town's silence was broken behind the slow, sorrowful toll of a bell. 1, 2, 3. No one should have heard it. Because the bell tower had burned down 50 years ago. Because the church that held it was nothing but ashes and blackened stone. Because the bell, if it still existed, should have been buried under weeds and silence. Yet every night for the past week the bell had rung, and every morning someone was found dead in their bed. Peaceful, but pale. Frozen. Gone. But that wasn't the scariest part. Each death matched a sin. A secret sin. From long, long ago. Benton was the kind of place tourists skipped. A town with peeling paint, empty streets, and too many locked windows. The only thing that kept it going was routine. Same folks, same stories, same nothing. But the old folks remembered St. Luke's. It used to stand tall in the heart of town, white steeple rising against the pines like a knife pointing at God. It burned on Halloween night, 1975. No one talked much about why. Some said lightning struck. Others whispered darker things about a girl, a book, and a blood ritual gone wrong. The truth? That got buried. The church was never rebuilt. The bell was never recovered. Life just moved on. Until now. The first night the bell rang, folks thought it was a prank. By morning, Martha Wainwright was dead. Heart failure, the doctor said. But Martha had no history. She'd been as strong as a bull, stubborn as a weed. The town's gossip queen, too. What no one talked about? Martha had been a cruel woman in her youth. She'd falsely accused a young black boy of theft in 1973. He vanished 2 days later. The case went cold. Martha died with her eyes open, mouth slightly parted, as if she'd heard something coming for her. The bell rang again. Midnight. And in the morning, Jerry Penrose, retired sheriff, was found in his recliner. TV still on. A beer half finished. Heart attack, they said again. Jerry had secrets, though. Back in '74, he beat a confession out of a man who hadn't done the crime. The man, Jimmy Strick, hanged himself a year later. No one blamed Jerry. No one dared. But the bell had remembered. Nina Harlow was 16, a quiet girl with sharp eyes and a love for old books. Her mother was the town librarian. Her father? Unknown. But Nina felt something was wrong. Like something was crawling under the skin of the town. Like the air smelled too old. Like whispers followed her at night. She started keeping a notebook. She noticed something the adults missed. Every person who died had grandchildren. And their grandkids were all friends with Nina. Or rather, they used to be. Now they were getting nosebleeds, nightmares, bruises that looked like rings around their wrists. Todd Lively, the town dentist, was the next to go. At 12:03 a.m., the bell rang again. By dawn, he was gone. He had 2 kids. One of them, Aaron, was in Nina's class. Todd had run an illegal adoption scam in the 80s, sold babies, some from mothers who didn't even know they'd given birth. No one ever caught him. Until now. Aaron's nose bled for an hour that morning. He told Nina he dreamed of a burning church and a woman with no eyes. Nina believed him. Nina dug into the town archives. Late nights, dusty boxes, yellowing photos. She found a list, a roster from 1925, handwritten in faded ink. It was titled The Covenant of the Bell. It wasn't a church list. It wasn't official. It was a pact, signed in blood, by 13 names. All ancestors of the people dying now. They made a deal. Protection for their families, power, fertile crops, no war deaths. In return, every 50 years, the bell would ring. Each toll would claim a soul, one tied to a sin committed by a blood relative, and the debt would pass to the children. Nina brought the list to her friends, Aaron, Lizzie, and Miles. They were scared, but they listened, because they'd all been dreaming the same dream. A tall, burned woman standing in a field of ash, her mouth stitched shut, her fingers pointing to a blackened bell swinging in the wind. No clapper inside, yet it tolled. They were connected. By blood. By sin. Their ancestors made the pact. Now they were the price. Only 12 had died. One name was left on the list. Harlow, Nina's family name. Her grandmother had been a midwife. Rumors said she let unwanted babies die in secret. For money. For mercy. No one knew. But the bell did. Nina was the 13th. At midnight, the bell would toll again, and she would die. Nina had one shot. She gathered the others. They returned to the ruins of St. Luke's. Weeds had grown through stone. The air smelled like burnt copper. They found the bell, half buried, rusted, cracked, but still there. No clapper. But it tolled. Nina cut her palm and bled on the bell. The others followed. They formed a circle. She read from the pact she'd translated, every word in Latin, every curse, every sin. The bell screamed, not rang, screamed. Fire burst from the ground. Shadows twisted. The burned woman appeared, stitched mouth bursting open. She was their guilt, their pain, their inheritance. And Nina faced her. The woman raised her hand. She could take Nina, or Nina offered something else, a trade. Take the pact, she said. Bind it to me. Let the others go." The spirit tilted her head. Accepted. The other kids fell unconscious. Nina stood alone in the ash. The bell hasn't rung since. Benton moved on quietly. Like it always does, the old sins. Buried again. But Nina Harlow? She hasn't spoken in a year. She walks the woods alone. She visits the church ruins. Sometimes she hums lullabies no one taught her. And every 50 years, she'll be waiting. Because now she is the bell. And the bell never forgets. The Langley family didn't believe in bad omens. If they had, they might have noticed the way the clouds coiled like snakes that Monday morning, or how the wind shifted just as the moving truck backed into the driveway of 47 Maple Road. They might have noticed the bird, an old crow with a gnarled left wing, staring at them from the telephone wire, not cawing, just watching. But people like Mark and Lisa Langley didn't believe in signs. They believed in Zillow listings and mortgage approvals. They were from the city, Boston, where the streets buzzed at all hours and silence was a luxury no one could afford. Mark was a high school English teacher on sabbatical. Lisa worked remotely in healthcare tech. Their daughter Ellie was 10, smart for her age but fragile like a porcelain figurine. Her lungs hadn't worked right when she was born. Bronchial tubes too narrow, doctors said. She'll outgrow it, one had told them. So far she hadn't. They thought Bleeders Hollow would help. The house was a faded yellow Victorian with white trim and a porch that groaned when you walked across it. It was the kind of place where you expected to find old baby shoes tucked into the attic or a forgotten wedding dress sealed in plastic. The realtor, a woman named Maggie Heller, smiled too much. The kind of smile that didn't reach the eyes. "A real gem," she said, patting the banister as if it were an old dog. "You won't find a better place in all of Grindle County. And the people here, they're good folks, old-fashioned, but warm." The house had been on the market for 4 years. Their first week in Bleeders Hollow was uneventful in the way dreams are. Calm, still, just a little off. Neighbors brought casseroles, real ones, with handwritten recipe cards tucked under foil. The Websters from next door came over with an apple pie and a paper bag of fresh eggs. The Murphys from across the street offered a bottle of plum wine. Everyone smiled too much. They asked about Ellie, about the move, about how the Langleys slept their first night. And then each one, every single neighbor, ended their conversation the same way. "You folks make sure to stay inside come the full moon. Just good practice around here." Mark laughed it off. "What, are you worried we'll turn into werewolves?" But no one laughed back. They just gave that same polite smile and changed the subject. The full moon came 5 days later. It rose fat and red over the trees like something ancient and swollen. The town was quiet by 10 p.m. No porch lights, no dogs barking, not even crickets. The kind of silence that wasn't just empty, it was waiting. At exactly midnight, Ellie woke screaming. Lisa ran into her room, heart pounding. "It's okay, baby, it's okay." But Ellie wasn't pointing at a dream or even at her window. She was pointing down, at the street. Mark pulled the curtain aside, and there they were. The neighbors, the Websters, the Murphys, Maggie, the realtor, the man from the bakery, standing silently on the pavement outside, all of them looking straight ahead, and all of them bleeding, slow, steady rivers of red from their eyes. They didn't speak of it the next morning, not because they didn't want to, but because it didn't happen. Mark was up before sunrise, made a pot of coffee, and checked the street. No blood, no footprints, no congregation of eye-bleeding neighbors, just dew on the mailbox and tire tracks in the gravel from Maggie's blue Civic. Maybe he dreamed it. Maybe Ellie did, and her scream was strong enough to plant the image in his half-asleep brain. He wanted to believe that. He told Lisa what he thought he'd seen. She was quiet, watching Ellie at the table with her cereal, spooning dry Cheerios without milk. Ellie's eyes looked puffy. "You remember anything strange from last night?" Lisa asked. Ellie didn't answer right away. She chewed slowly, then said, "I saw them. but I think they saw me too. Later that morning, Mark walked into town. Lisa needed flour. The bakery was small, cramped, and smelled like cinnamon and lemon soap. A radio played some old country tune in the background. Behind the counter stood a man Mark recognized. He'd been out on the street last night. One of the watchers. "Morning," Mark said, feeling weird in his own skin. The man smiled too wide. "Morning, Mr. Langley. First trip to Dunham's Bakery?" Mark nodded. "You were out, late last night?" The smile didn't fade, but the man's eyes cooled. "Can't say I was. Must have been someone else. We Hollow folks hit the sack early, moon nights especially." Mark swallowed, bought the flour, walked home faster than he meant to. That afternoon, Ellie found something strange in the garden, a patch of disturbed dirt near the back fence behind the lilac bushes. Something had been dug up or buried. She used her plastic shovel and scraped at the soft ground. It didn't take long before she found the jar, a mason jar sealed tight with wax and string. Inside it was a bundle of hair and teeth, tiny teeth, child size. She didn't scream, not at first. She brought it to her parents. Lisa dropped it on the porch. Mark smashed it with a hammer. Inside, tucked beneath the hair, was a torn scrap of yellow paper with the words, "One child for one moon." At 3:07 a.m., Ellie woke screaming again. But this time, it wasn't because she saw something outside. It was because she saw something in her room. Lisa burst in first. Ellie was standing in the corner, her face pale as flour, her hands shaking. "It came from the floor," she said. "From underneath. It touched my foot." Mark checked the room. Nothing. No open windows. No signs of animals. But he felt it too. The unnatural chill. The faint smell of damp earth. When he lifted the rug under Ellie's bed, he found a circle, drawn in what looked like ash. Inside the circle were symbols. Old, jagged, ritualistic. Mark took pictures and emailed them to a former student, Natalie, a grad student in folklore. She called him an hour later. "Where the hell did you find this?" she asked, voice shaking. "In my daughter's room," Mark said. "These are Appalachian blood sigils, used in sacrifice rites, sealing mostly, to keep something underground, asleep. Or," Mark asked, "or fed." Lisa and Mark began researching the town's history. No library, but there was a museum, one room, 2 employees. They found an old map, pre-1890s. The forest behind their house was once called the Bled Grounds. The curator, an old man named Howard, squinted at the map. "Place was cursed," he said plainly. "Whole town knows. That's why we changed the name. New luck." "But the luck didn't change," Mark said. Howard looked them in the eye. "No, sir. The thing we made the deal with never lets go. We just bled less often." That night, Ellie went missing. Her window was open. The ash circle was gone. And on the wall, scrawled in blood, were the words, "The roots remember. One more moon." Mark sat awake that night with a baseball bat and a bottle of warm beer. He'd checked all the locks twice. The motion light on the porch flickered every few minutes, triggered by wind or the shuffle of tree branches. Lisa didn't want him up. She said the townspeople were weird, sure, but harmless. "Maybe they're just religious," she offered, "or traditional. You know how old towns can be." But Mark couldn't sleep. Not since the teeth. Not since the jar. At midnight, the bell in town rang 3 times. He stood at the window, beer clenched in one hand, bat in the other. Nothing. But something rustled in the woods. He couldn't see it, but he could feel it. The next day, Ellie wouldn't go outside. "I hear them," she said. Lisa knelt by her bed. "You hear who, baby?" Ellie pointed toward the woods. "They whisper. Every night. They say my name." Lisa wanted to tell her it was imagination, a child's nightmare stretching its legs. But when she kissed Ellie's forehead, it was ice cold. Lisa went into town for groceries. Every eye followed her. Conversation stopped when she passed. She tried to ask Maggie, the realtor, about the jar, about the strange phrase, but Maggie just smiled too wide again. Best not to dig, Lisa. Bleeder's Hollow has roots, and roots remember. Lisa left the store without buying anything. Later that night, they found claw marks on the back fence, 3 deep gouges, each one the length of a forearm, too clean to be an animal, too deliberate. Lisa whispered to Mark, "I think they're trying to scare us out." Mark shook his head. "No, they want us to stay. That's what's worse." At 3:07 a.m., Ellie woke screaming again, but this time it wasn't because she saw something outside. It was because she saw something in her room. Lisa burst in first. Ellie was standing in the corner, her face pale as flour, her hands shaking. "It came from the floor," she said, "from underneath. It touched my foot." Mark checked the room. Nothing. No open windows. No signs of animals. But he felt it too. The unnatural chill. The faint smell of damp earth. When he lifted the rug under Ellie's bed, he found a circle, drawn in what looked like ash. Inside the circle were symbols. Old, jagged, ritualistic. Mark took pictures and emailed them to a former student, Natalie, a grad student in folklore. She called him an hour later. "Where the hell did you find this?" she asked, voice shaking. "In my daughter's room," Mark said. "These are Appalachian blood sigils, used in sacrifice rites, sealing mostly, to keep something underground, asleep." "Or," Mark asked, "or fed?" Lisa and Mark began researching the town's history. No library, but there was a museum. 1 room, 2 employees. They found an old map, pre-1890s. The forest behind their house was once called the Bled Grounds. The curator, an old man named Howard, squinted at the map. "Place was cursed," he said plainly. "Whole town knows. That's why we changed the name. New name, new luck." "But the luck didn't change," Mark said. Howard looked them in the eye. "No, sir. The thing we made the deal with never lets go. We just bled less often." That night, Ellie went missing. Her window was open. The ash circle was gone. And on the wall, scrawled in blood, were the words, "The roots remember. One more moon." Ellie was gone. The moment Lisa screamed her daughter's name, every window on Maple Road lit up like stage lights. But no one came outside. Not one neighbor knocked. Not one asked if they needed help. Mark ran barefoot into the backyard, calling her name into the darkness. Lisa stood at the foot of the stairs, hands shaking, whispering prayers she hadn't said in years. The police came an hour later, 2 deputies from the county. They asked questions, wrote down details. But something about their silence when they saw the symbols under Ellie's rug chilled Lisa more than the cold floor beneath her feet. Deputy Wallace touched one of the marks lightly. "You need to leave," he whispered, more to the rug than to them. "This place ain't fit for children." Mark tried to leave the next day, packed a suitcase, pulled his car out of the garage, got Ellie's favorite toy, started the engine. The car wouldn't move. Not like the battery died, like the wheels were sunk into the ground. He got out and looked. The asphalt under the car had split open. Thin roots, black as tar, wet and pulsing, had wound through the treads of the tires and into the undercarriage. When Mark reached out to touch one, it recoiled, then tightened. Lisa saw it too. The house didn't want them to leave. The forest didn't want them to leave. Bleeder's Hollow didn't want them to leave. That night Maggie came to visit. She didn't knock, just stood on the porch, arms folded, eyes glinting. Lisa opened the door, furious, broken. "What do you people want?" Maggie didn't flinch. "It's not what we want, it's what the Hollow demands." She stepped forward. "You were chosen. Families are always chosen. Every decade. One family, one child. The pact must be fed. The roots must drink." Mark raised a hammer. Maggie just laughed. "You can fight it, scream, pray. But the moon is rising. And when the blood moon comes, the hollow will take what it's owed. Lisa and Mark boarded up Ellie's room, hung salt at the windows, drew circles in chalk, lit candles, played lullabies from her favorite playlist on repeat. Still no sign of Ellie, but sometimes they heard giggling under the floorboards. Mark found a journal buried in the basement wall, wrapped in leather, bound with a bone clasp. Inside, dates, names, and drawings of the Hollow's history. Generations, sacrifices, one every 10 years. Always a family from outside, always a child, always a full blood moon. In the back, a final page written in a different hand. You cannot destroy the Hollow, but you can trade. You can offer blood of your own. And if it accepts, it might let the child go. Mark took a knife. Lisa stopped him. No, she said. It wants Ellie, but it doesn't need her. It needs pain, memory, regret. We both have enough. She sliced her palm, whispered into the floorboards. If you can hear us, take me instead. The lights blew out. The air went still. And Ellie began to scream. The scream echoed from below. Mark and Lisa froze, the candlelight in their hands flickering. The air thickened, heavy as wet soil. Ellie's voice was rising, not in fear, but in agony. Mark ran to the living room and pried open the trapdoor that led to the root cellar. A blast of foul air hit him like a slap. It stank of rot, of old meat and something metallic. He climbed down first. Lisa followed. The cellar had changed. The walls pulsed as if alive, covered in thick, dark vines that twisted like veins. In the center, a hole had opened in the earth, a tunnel leading deeper. Ellie's scream came again. Lisa grabbed Mark's hand. We go together. And together they stepped into the hollow. The tunnel was damp, the floor soft and warm beneath their feet. Symbols marked the walls, drawn in glowing red. The deeper they went, the louder the whispers grew. Names, thousands of names, chanted by unseen voices in the dark. Ellie's name was one of them. They reached a chamber carved from root and bone. In the center, Ellie, tied by vines, her eyes wide with fear, but unblinking. Her mouth was open, yet she no longer screamed. Her skin was pale, almost translucent. Her fingers bled slowly into the soil. The roots drank from her. Mark lunged forward, trying to cut the vines. A figure rose from the far wall. It had no face, just skin stretched tight over a skull-like head. No eyes, but it saw. No mouth, but it spoke. You came, it said. Lisa stepped forward. We offer ourselves. Let her go. The creature tilted its head. The pact is old, but you bleed with memory. Pain. It pleases the hollow. The roots slithered. Mark felt them tighten around his ankles. Let her go, Lisa begged. One must stay. One must feed. Choose. Lisa turned to Mark, he to her. No, Mark said. We don't play your game. He took the bone-handled knife from his belt. He cut the vines from Ellie's wrists. The ground screamed. The walls trembled. Lisa took Ellie in her arms. Mark raised the knife. If blood is what you want, he drove it into his chest. The roots struck like lightning, wrapped him, dragged him to the soil. His last breath. Lisa's name. The roots went still. The chamber quieted. The hollow accepted. Lisa carried Ellie out of the tunnel. As they emerged, the trapdoor sealed behind them. Forever. The next morning, the town was different. Brighter. Lighter. The neighbors waved, but their smiles were real. No more blood in the eyes. No more jars. No more midnight bells. The price had been paid. Lisa buried Mark beneath the lilac bush. Ellie planted sunflowers over the grave. The wind, for the first time, smelled like home.